Hi folks, welcome back to Dungeons and Dry Brushing. My name is Daniel, and today we're diving into Dungeon Basics Episode 2. Last time we talked about how to make doors for your dungeon. This time we're talking about pillars. Let's go. So, why are pillars or columns important to have in your dungeon? Well, firstly, they're the easiest set dressing available for beginners, and they fit in just about any indoor medieval setting. Secondly, they can provide tactical cover in combat if you want to make those kinds of encounters more interesting. And third, the tall objects help to imply a 3D space, even though we never see the roof or the ceiling of the dungeon for obvious reasons. So I have my 3D printer working on some files right now from Thingiverse.com. We'll take a look at those a little later. But first, let's begin our handcrafted versions. Our first column is a no-budget craft. Aside from paint and glue, this costs nothing. We're just using an old egg carton. The texture that you get from these is actually really great. We're going to start by cutting out the flat pieces of the carton, since those will be the easiest to work with. We need 4 sections that are just 1 by 2 inches, and a square that's 1 by 1. That will make up the main body and capstone of the column. I'm just going to assemble these with hot glue. We're also going to want a base for the column, so I'm going to cut 2 squares that are 1 1/4 inches, and some 1/4 inch strips to go between them. Once these are assembled, you're actually almost done with the construction. But if you want to add some weight to the column so that it's harder to move around the table and it feels a little more substantial, now's the time. So I'm going to just slide a rock into the base of the column with some hot glue. With that dried, it's time to assemble the base and glue the 2 pieces together. For the base, I'm just gluing the 1/4 inch strips between the 2 1 1/4 inch squares. The next step is some Mod Podge with black paint to help stiffen the material. Then you can go ahead with whatever your dungeon's paint job is. I'll be sticking with the same basic grays and earthy tones since this is Dungeon Basics after all. It's a gray overbrush, 2 dry brushes in progressively lighter shades of gray, and then our homemade black wash to make the stone texture we get from the egg carton really pop out. That's 1 column down. So the egg carton material makes for great stone texture, but if you happen to have a few dollars that you want to spend on this inexpensive craft foam is available at almost any dollar store or craft store, and this just happens to be one of the projects that it excels at. For this style of column, we're going to be just cutting 1 inch by 1 inch squares of foam. You cut as many as you need to make your columns the desired height. I recommend at least 2 inches, and then you just stack them on top of each other and glue them. I'm using Eileen's Tacky Glue. I don't bother peeling the paper off of the foam when I'm making these because I actually like the extra layers of texture and the crumbling look that the paper gives it, but if you don't like that, it comes off very easily. Once the glue is dried, I also add a flat-headed screw into the bottom of the column. This gives it a bit of weight and will make it harder to knock over when it's on the table. After that, I take my hobby knife and start cutting in a pattern. I alternate each layer. First I cut a line down the center of the foam, then on the next layer I cut 2 lines, one on the left and one on the right. When you turn the column to the next side, change the pattern. Start with 2 lines on top, then 1 line in the center in the layer below that. Once you do the whole column, this will give you the impression that it's made of individual stones. We're going to be following almost the exact same process for painting as we did with the egg carton. Black Mod Podge and a dark grey overbrush. Because we have individual stones here, I am going to pick a few out in other colors, the same burnt orange and light grey that we've been using on our other Dungeon Basics projects. Then just an overbrush of light grey and a black wash. So in addition to doing columns this way, it's incredibly easy to use the exact same method to make some fallen or toppled pillars as well. This can not only be good for scatter terrain, but it can help spur a little creativity in your players. If they notice them or ask about them, you can always do a perception check and let them see how easy it might be to push over another column, either on top of a boss monster or to create dynamic cover in a fight. So that covers our free and low-cost crafting options. For contrast, here are the files that I got from my 3D printer. If you're looking for free files like this, the OpenForge project is pretty much as good as it gets. Otherwise, there are things out there like Scan the World that have real pillars and columns, as well as all kinds of other things that are out there in museums or ruins around the world, and you can just download them, scale them for your game, and print them. But if you're looking for a specific vibe or design for your fantasy civilization, you can always throw a few dollars out there and get pretty much anything you want for a 3D printer. I primed the models in Mechanicus Standard Grey as a starting point. Any dark grey is fine though. From there, I'm going to pick out some stones in a lighter grey, burnt orange, and off-white. I just pick these at random wherever I think they might look good. After that, it's just a dry brush with Drake Tooth and a black wash. Here we are, folks. All 3 column types so that you can see and judge the differences for yourself. The ease and detail of the 3D printed pillars is obviously a strength, but I really like the texture that you can get from the egg carton as well. I've used that technique in a few other projects, one of which I'll put on the screen now, to get an incredible stone texture. So again, if you don't need this specific project for your game, a lot of this can be applied to other crafts. And if you like the project but don't like these stone colors, you really can paint them in just about any color scheme and it will still read as stone. For proof of that, I'll show you a few other projects I'm working on now that use more unusual stone colors. Alright folks, thanks for watching. If you could hit like, subscribe, that would be fantastic. It really does help the channel grow, and it means a lot to me. If there are things that you would like to see covered in the Dungeon Basics series, or if there are just things that you think every dungeon needs and you can't do without, you have to have them even if you're a beginner, please let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to cover them in a future video. Thanks, and I'll see you on the next one.